Imagine this. Outside, snow drifts pile against your door. The wind howls like a living thing, clawing at cracks in the wood. There is no fireplace glowing in the corner. No central heating hums behind the walls. Only darkness, cold stone, and the sound of winter breathing against your house. Now imagine, you're warm. This was not a fantasy for people in the Middle Ages. It was survival turned into art. For most of us, warmth is a switch, a thermostat, a luxury we don't think twice about. For them, it was a daily battle. Every gust of wind, every frozen night was a reminder that nature didn't care if you lived to see spring. So how did they do it? How did medieval families sleep through blizzard nights without firewood, without modern blankets, sometimes without even a proper chimney? The secret was simple and brilliant. They went underground. When the frost came early and the nights grew cruel, medieval people stopped trying to fight the sky. They turned to the earth. Because deep down, they learned a truth that even modern science confirms. The ground remembers warmth. Just 3 or 4 feet below the surface, the earth holds a steady temperature, warmer than the air in winter, cooler than the air in summer. It is nature's constant heartbeat. And medieval builders knew how to listen to it. Families began digging, not graves, but shelters. Half homes, half caves carved into the hillside or tucked against the base of old trees. To outsiders, they might have looked primitive, like burrows. To those who lived inside, they were the difference between life and death. The walls were made of mud and stone, thick enough to hold the day's weak sunlight and release it slowly during the night. They worked like natural batteries, absorbing every bit of warmth, then giving it back hour by hour as the blizzard roared outside. Inside, the air was still. The thick earth blocked the sound of the wind. The walls felt cool to the touch, yet comforting, like the steady warmth of a sleeping animal. These people had discovered something profound. The earth itself could be your blanket. But they didn't just dig holes and hope for the best. Medieval builders were smarter than we often give them credit for. They learned to shape their underground shelters like living organs, wide at the base, narrow at the top, so heat would rise and stay trapped where people slept. They sealed gaps with straw and clay, polished the inside walls with a mixture of mud and animal fat that blocked moisture and kept the cold from creeping in. Above them, blizzards tore through villages and forests. Below, in these quiet earth homes, families gathered around a single candle, not for light, but to feel human. Even the layout was intentional. Sleeping areas sat toward the deepest part of the shelter, where the temperature changed the least. The small entrance tunnel acted like an airlock, catching the cold before it reached the heart of the room. Some families even covered that tunnel with thick cloth or hanging hides, turning the entrance into a barrier of trapped air. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't comfortable by modern standards. But it worked, and it saved countless lives. The earth became their ally, and stone their friend. Above ground, wealthier families copied the same idea in semi-buried houses, part home, part fortress against the cold. They built the lower half into the hillside, letting soil press naturally against the outer walls. This insulated the rooms like nature's own thermal blanket. It's the same principle used today in modern energy-efficient architecture, but medieval people did it with bare hands and instinct. When daylight came, these buried walls absorbed every bit of sun that touched them. At night, they radiated that stored heat back inward, turning a freezing cave into something that felt alive. To the medieval mind, warmth wasn't just about fire. It was a kind of magic, a quiet contract between humans and the land they walked on. And that magic extended beyond architecture. Every detail of these shelters was shaped by the rhythm of survival. Floors were made of compacted earth mixed with straw, which stopped the cold from seeping upward. Some families laid layers of bark or dry moss before spreading straw on top, creating tiny pockets of air that acted as insulation. Those small spaces, invisible, simple, were what kept frost from creeping into their bones. They even learned how to angle their walls to block the wind. A north-facing wall was built thicker than a south-facing one. Roofs were slanted, not just for rain, but to deflect the worst gusts. Every shape, every material, had purpose. In many parts of northern Europe, archaeologists have found traces of these semi-buried houses, their stone outlines still visible under grass and thyme. Some are so well designed that modern thermal cameras show higher residual warmth in those ancient ruins than in the soil around them. Even now, centuries later, the earth remembers their heat. And perhaps the most haunting detail of all? These people didn't think of this as innovation. It was simply life. To them, warmth was something you earned, not by owning wood or wealth, but by knowing the world. Every stone, every clump of mud, every patch of straw was part of a living system that breathed with them through the winter. When the wind screamed outside, their homes murmured back in silence. Stone, straw, and skin, bound together against the cold. It's easy to imagine one of those nights. A mother quieting her child, listening to snow hit the roof like sand. The smell of damp earth mixed with smoke. The faint glow of a hidden ember in the dark. Outside, the world was frozen and merciless. Inside, a pulse of life persisted, soft, steady, and human. This was the hidden architecture of warmth. Not built by kings or masons, but by ordinary hands that refused to freeze. Once inside those buried shelters, warmth was not a luxury, it was a science of instinct. Every inch of the space mattered. Every object had a role in fighting the cold. The floor beneath them, made of packed earth, could have been a death trap, a slow thief of body heat, pulling warmth down into the soil. But medieval families learned how to stop it. They covered the ground with layers of straw and reeds, sometimes 2 feet thick, replacing it whenever it grew damp or dark. That straw wasn't decoration, it was their mattress, their insulation, their shield. Step on it and it whispered softly, but beneath that sound was survival itself. At night, children slept directly on it, wrapped in wool or furs, while adults stayed close to the edges, blocking the drafts that tried to sneak in from the corners. They had learned through generations that warmth wasn't something to chase, it was something you trapped. And to trap it, you needed layers. The same principle shaped their walls. Forget modern drywall and insulation, this was medieval engineering, raw and ingenious. They built a frame of thin wooden branches, woven together like a basket. Then they packed it with a mixture of mud, straw, clay, animal hair, and, yes, even dry dung. It may sound crude to us, but they understood something essential. Air is the best insulator when it stands still. Their woven walls captured those air pockets perfectly, tiny prisons for warmth. Over that, they spread thick layers of clay, pressing it by hand until it sealed every gap. When it dried, it hardened into armor. No frost could bite through it. No wind could whisper past it. Some families went further still. They coated their inner walls with a thin layer of animal fat or beeswax, creating a water-resistant surface that trapped warmth and kept moisture out. It was brilliant, and it smelled faintly of smoke and earth, the scent of safety. These homes weren't cold stone tombs. They were alive. Their walls breathed and exhaled with the seasons. During the day, they absorbed the gentle heat of the fire or the rare sunlight that entered through a narrow slit window. At night, they released that stored warmth back into the room, hour by hour, like the slow heartbeat of the house itself. But even the cleverest walls couldn't do everything. When the sun vanished and the wind returned, there was only one heat source left, the human body. Here, survival became intimacy. Families didn't sleep separately. They merged. One bed, one pile of blankets, one shared warmth. Parents, children, sometimes grandparents, all pressed close under layers of wool and fur. Privacy vanished, but life remained. Each body was a small fire, radiating about as much heat as a candle. Together, those fires could keep a room several degrees warmer than the freezing air outside. And when you're living at the edge of survival, a few degrees mean everything. Sometimes, warmth came with horns and hooves. During the worst nights, families brought their livestock indoors. A cow gives off as much heat as a space heater. A pig, almost the same. Chickens added their own feathery warmth to the mix, scratching quietly in corners while frost painted the windows white. The air grew thick, heavy with the smell of straw, sweat, and animals. To us, it might sound unbearable. To them, it was comfort. Every breath meant you were still alive. And there was something strangely human about it, this shared survival between species. The animals gave milk, eggs, and labor during the day, and returned the favor at night with the heat of their bodies. It was a silent contract between the people and the creatures that fed them. Still, not every home had enough animals to share. So when the cold bit too deep, neighbors moved in together. Whole families crammed into the strongest house in the village, sleeping side by side. Dozens of people, shoulder to shoulder, wrapped in whatever cloth they could find. The air would fog with breath, the floor groan under their combined weight. It was crowded, loud, and uncomfortable, but it worked. Children slept in the middle, protected by layers of adults and animals around them. The strongest men and women took the outer edges, using their bodies as shields against the drafts. They didn't know the term thermodynamics, but they lived it. Each family had its pattern, a rhythm learned through bitter experience. The smallest went to bed first, the oldest last. The last one awake checked the fire, made sure no cold wind slipped through cracks, and covered the glowing embers with a layer of ash. That ritual was sacred. To forget it was to gamble with frost and death. Even the act of sleeping became strategic. People lay close not just for warmth, but for rhythm, synchronized breathing, shared heartbeat, comfort in the darkness. There were no separate bedrooms, no locked doors, no walls between people. Only shared existence. And in that closeness, something unexpected grew. When you huddled together, when you shared one blanket and one breath, the barriers of daily life melted away. Children listened to stories whispered in the dark. Elders passed down lessons born from harder winters. Mothers hummed old songs to steady the silence. Cold may have ruled the land, but connection ruled the night. The warmth they created was not just physical, it was emotional. Every layer of straw, every shared blanket, every beating heart was part of one ancient truth. Warmth comes from togetherness. And so, as the blizzard screamed outside and frost clawed at their doors, the people of the Middle Ages didn't fight winter. They embraced each other. And in doing so, they conquered it. When darkness fell, the real battle began. The wind outside didn't stop, it sharpened. The night in medieval winter wasn't just cold. It was a predator. And the only weapon people had against it was fire. But firewood was precious, too precious to waste. So medieval families became masters of a lost art called firebanking. When the flames burned low, they didn't let them die. They buried the fire alive. Using iron tongs or bare, calloused hands, they gathered the glowing coals and gently covered them with ash, a thick, pale blanket that smothered the oxygen but trapped the heat. Beneath that layer, the embers slept, glowing faintly through the night like the heartbeat of the home itself. It looked like nothing, just a pile of gray dust, but inside, it was a secret sun waiting to rise again. At dawn, someone, often the mother or eldest daughter, would kneel beside it, brush away the ash, and breathe. One slow breath. Then another. Until the ember stirred, turned orange, and a tiny flame blinked to life. The first warmth of morning, reborn from the ashes of last night. That small moment, that whisper of smoke, was hope made visible. Wood was not infinite. Forests were sacred, and in the dead of winter, even a single fallen branch could mean survival. Families learned to stretch their fuel with precision. They burned small, steady coals instead of roaring fires. Big flames looked impressive, but they ate wood greedily. Small fires breathed longer. Controlled. Silent. Efficient. They learned how to feed fire like you feed a child, not too much, not too little. They knew which woods burned fast and which ones smoldered. Oak for the long night. Birch for a quick morning spark. Pine for smoke that kept insects away. Fire wasn't just warmth. It was knowledge passed down through hands, not books. And when the last ember glowed faintly red, they buried it again, because losing it meant starting from nothing, with flint and prayer. But warmth wasn't just about fire. It was about air, the invisible enemy that crept in through cracks and gaps, undoing everything the family had built. So they fought it too, with the same patience. They hung thick curtains around beds, heavy cloth or woven wool, transforming a simple bed into a cocoon. Inside those curtains, a small pocket of heat formed, a private world within the freezing room. Some even added a second layer, hides or old cloaks, trapping air between fabrics. Every breath made it warmer, every movement sealed the cocoon tighter. Doors and windows were battlegrounds. Long tubes of fabric stuffed with straw, early draft stoppers, lined the edges. Cracks in the wall were filled with moss or old rags. Even smoke had its purpose. A thin line of it escaping from the fire pit told them where drafts were sneaking in. They became readers of air. The flicker of a candle revealed everything. If it leaned, the wind was coming through. If it danced, the house was leaking warmth. If it burned still and straight, the shelter was perfect. It was a constant chess match between humans and the cold, and most nights, the humans won. But even victory required routine. Before sleeping, the family performed a quiet ritual of survival. The father checked the roof beams for snow, tapping the wood to listen for strain. The mother rearranged the straw bedding, shaking off the moisture. Children fetched leaves and dry moss to stuff the cracks by the door. Every sound in the house, the rustle of straw, the scrape of clay, the soft crackle of ash, was part of a song that meant safety. And then, at last, they would lie down. Hot stones, heated earlier in the fire and wrapped in cloth, were placed under the covers. The stones hissed faintly when first touched, then cooled slowly through the night, radiating gentle warmth. Families kept several, rotating them like clockwork, one cooling, one heating, always maintaining that delicate balance between comfort and caution. The walls breathed. The fire glowed beneath its ash. Outside, the snow fell like time itself, silent and endless. Inside, there was warmth. Not much, not enough by modern standards, but enough to live. Enough to wake up and see another dawn through the frost-covered window. And in that dawn, something more than survival was born. Because these nightly rituals, the burying of coals, the layering of straw, the shared breath of family, built more than shelter. They built community. Neighbors checked on each other. If one chimney had gone cold, others came to help. If one roof began to sag under snow, hands appeared before sunrise. Warmth became a shared currency, traded freely in labor, food, and trust. It wasn't pity. It was logic. A warm village survived. A divided one did not. Old women shared the secrets of draft-proofing. Young men gathered fallen branches in teams. Children learned to spot frost creeping along the walls, and how to fight it with laughter, movement, and stories. In that endless struggle against the cold, something sacred formed, a kind of medieval faith not written in books, but in acts of care. The fire was never just fire. It was memory, a symbol of every winter survived, every child saved, every ember that refused to die. And perhaps that's the truest lesson of all. When you think of the Middle Ages, you might picture darkness, hardship, or ignorance. But the truth is far more human. They were scientists without titles, engineers without blueprints, survivalists guided by instinct and cooperation. They lived close to the edge, but they lived. So the next time a chill runs through your room, or your heater hums to life, remember them, the families who faced the frozen world with nothing but mud, straw, and hope. They didn't curse the winter. They outsmarted it. And as the fire's glow faded into ash, someone always whispered the same quiet promise. We'll make it through the night.